We're joined by Robert Edwards to talk about what traveling through Africa taught him about opportunity, inequality, resilience, and the way we think about success. He joins us to expand the conversation. A very good evening to you and welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks very much for having me on the line this evening.
I mean, how phenomenal is it that you got to travel through 21 countries with vastly different economic realities? What did Africa teach you about money and survival that you simply couldn't learn in London?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks. So obviously, first of all, to be able to travel required myself to make some financial decisions and put myself in a position where I wasn't reliant on a salary to pay my credit card bill each month, or to pay the mortgage, or to pay the car loan, for example. So first of all, that's a key point I want to get across to people. But yes, secondly, Africa is a phenomenal place. There's many people who fly from South Africa to London and just skip all those countries in between.
Yeah.
And when I think of the history of Africa, from Tunisia and Carthage, the ancient Egyptians, Mali, the Great Zimbabwe, Ethiopia, Lalibela, etc., there's some fantastic, beautiful places to visit. And what I saw on the ground was definitely a continent that's heading in the right direction, a continent that's exciting, a continent where there's a lot of opportunity. Obviously, there's some risks and some dangers, but a lot happening well. And I think that in the world, as we're seeing Asia and China particularly have its moment in the sun, perhaps for the next 50 years,
Yeah.
it could be our turn after that.
You spent time in Ethiopia. What did you see there that changed your assumptions about poverty, wealth, and I mean, you touched a little bit on the development in Africa, but how did Ethiopia inspire you?
Ethiopia was unbelievable. Yeah, unfortunately, in my mind, growing up, the only thing I knew about Ethiopia was the famine that happened in the 80s. And that perception has not changed, because I never really heard much new about it since then. But obviously, as I got older, and in the last couple of years, I've been reading about the financial changes that the government has made. They're doing fantastic projects like building the Great Renaissance Dam, which is providing more electricity to the country and the wider region, and also clean electricity. Obviously, Egypt's not too happy about that, but perhaps that's
Yeah,
a discussion for a day.
absolutely.
But I wanted to visit Ethiopia because I wanted to see, is the country still the famine dust bowl that it was portrayed to me when I was young, or has it changed? And certainly has changed. And for example, when I was driving through the mountains and I saw electric tuk-tuks cruising around and carrying vegetables to markets, or transporting people as taxis, it was very exciting to see, and it's a country that's definitely moving in the right direction.
I mean, it's interesting that you make reference to, Ethiopia and the famine of the 80s. And of course, we know that Africa as a continent is often reduced to a narrative of poverty, conflict, corruption. After traveling here, where do you think that narrative perhaps gets fundamentally wrong? I mean, you knew what you knew then and traveled and saw something completely different.
Well, Africa is a massive place. So, yes, there are areas that have famine and conflict. And obviously, I was very close to the border of South Sudan and Sudan, which is obviously having some serious civil war issues at the moment. So, it's not to say that those things don't exist.
Yes, of
But
course
I
not.
think, I think, I think people like, I mean, even me, it's hard to fathom how big Africa actually is. Um, and there's a lot of places where that isn't the case. So it's about, and it's the same with South America, where I traveled extensively. Yes, there are some dangerous places in South America. Yes, there is some corruption and some bad infrastructure, but there's also some absolutely beautiful places, and there's some wonderful people doing some fantastic work on the continent. So it's the same as Africa, and it's about saying, okay, we can't paint the whole continent with the same brush. And there are actually some areas that are doing fantastically well.
There's a lot of talk about entrepreneurship, taking risks, but of course, for many young Africans facing unemployment and economic instability and insecurity, there is no financial safety net. And you left a secure corporate career to travel. And one of the big themes in your book is growth. What did traveling through Africa teach you about the difference between economic growth on paper and the reality on the ground experienced by ordinary people?
Well, exactly. It's tough. One thing I always love is just the friendliness of Africans. And when to tell a little brief story, I met some children in Ethiopia in a very remote town, and the children were only 10 years old. And I told them I was from South Africa, and they made reference to Shabalala's famous Soccer World Cup goal in 2010. And these kids weren't even alive in 2010. So to have that friendliness, that passion, that welcomeness, calling me a brother from the South, we are a fantastic continent. And one of although there are challenges with technology today, for example, if you can use a laptop. I mean, obviously, I know you have to firstly be able to have access to the internet, but if you can get access to the internet and on a laptop or a computer, kids these days can study coding. They can study numerous things online. They can do online courses. I've done financial courses which are fully remote, and study at your own pace. And from that, by obtaining a certain set of skills, they can then supply those skills to people around the world. And I think the West is in a little bit of trouble where the cost of labor is becoming so high. And because we're living in a digitized world now, more and more stuff will be outsourced. And in the past, it was simply manufacturing clothes, but we're starting to see accounting work being outsourced. We're starting to see software development being outsourced. We're starting to see IT services or legal work being outsourced. So there's a lot of opportunity for people who have access and who can learn a certain skill set like software development to earn income from anyone in the world who's willing to pay.
And before we let you go, Robert, your book is ultimately about making changes in your own life. For someone listening anywhere in the continent who's stuck in a job or perhaps a situation that they hate, but genuinely, realistically cannot afford to take a huge financial risk, what would you tell them?
Yeah, please just spend 6 months planning ahead.
Yeah.
So, for example, if you've got to sell your car or pay off your credit card debt, get yourself into a position where you are not reliant on that monthly salary to pay the bills. Once you're not reliant on that monthly salary, you become financially free. And then you are in a better position to say, okay, well, now let me save up a few $1,000s and travel either my own country or a country next door. So yes, I understand where you may be now in your current position, but that within 6 to 12 months, you can turn it around and please go for it.
Thank you very much. Thanks for speaking to us this evening. We're going to have to leave it there. That was Robert Edwards, author of Quit, Travel, Grow, What 21 Countries Taught Me About Money, Life and Freedom.